What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we're chatting with Doug Norrie from Locked On Nets. As the Brooklyn Nets are pending an implosion with the rumors circulating about Kevin Durant, his recent trade request. Where will KD ultimately be sent? Will he ultimately be sent somewhere? What happens with Kyrie Irving in the aftermath of handling the Kevin Durant situation? What's the best possible outcome for this Brooklyn Nets team? But first, a quick message from our friends over at RockAuto.com, because with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's basically impossible for your local chain auto parts store or new car dealership to stock all the parts that you could possibly need. You can save time and money when using rockauto.com. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the exact same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Here's a quick example for you. A Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store. It's only $216 from rockauto.com. The prices are always reliably low at Rock Auto for every single customer. And they don't price gouge you for being a DIY person, which is how it should be, right? You shouldn't have to pay more. They've got everything you could possibly need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even brand new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. And here's the really important part. When you go to hit checkout, write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box, so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Be sure to visit rockauto.com. Joining us now is Doug Norrie from Locked On Nets. You can follow on Twitter at Doug Norrie. Now, Doug, in the midst of all of this just mess, we're just going to call it a mess for now. We'll keep it kind of PG going on with the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, when you're looking at what a potential outcome for this entire Kevin Durant saga is going to potentially look like for Brooklyn, what are you looking for as the potential best outcome from this situation? Is it maybe a return like what the Rockets got for James Harden, just a mountain of draft capital? Or would they be better off trying to secure a package that has, say, maybe a true like cornerstone piece, an established player to try and, bring into the fold and continue to be relevant right away?
Yeah, so, okay, well, I would start by saying the truly best outcome would be somehow everyone just makes amends and they don't have to do any of this, and Durant and Kyrie and everyone come back. I'm still sort of like 5% on that island, and I'm probably sitting by myself. But the outside of that, I think the Durant and to some degree Kyrie's situation are different than other comps that we've had pretty recently, like Harden or even Gobert or DeJounte Murray, these trades that have just been massively front-loaded or back-loaded with draft picks. The problem with that situation for the Nets is the Nets don't own any of their draft picks going forward, so they can't tank. They just have to get players back. Yeah. Heading over to the Rockets to see how it's going. And I know you and I talked about this before, but the Nets cannot. There's no incentive for the Nets to tank because the Rockets would, unless they just want to make the Rockets better going forward. So they basically have to get talent back to be able to just at least stay relevant, to sell tickets, maybe hopefully make the playoffs as like a play-in or, a 6 seed or something like that. So I don't think those Gobert like 5 picks ones are good comps. I think they need to get something like, they need to get talent right back. So whether that's a DeAndre Ayton and Mikal Bridges, something like that, I'm holding out this like weird hope that the rumors around Toronto jumping into this and some package around Barnes and Obi is like something that might be palatable, or even like Siakam and the other guys don't come back. But bottom line is, and the Nets know this obviously, is that they just can't take a ton of draft picks back, because being bad, it won't matter at all. They cannot tank. And so getting the draft capital, then what they're doing then is just sitting around for the next few years hoping the other team is bad, which is not going to happen because they're getting Kevin Durant. So they're in a really, really, really tricky spot. So I'm just going to say this stop by saying they have to get some kind of talent back in the door that can allow them to at least tread water / maybe be good-ish. They're not going to be able to be a contender, but that has to be pretty much their starting point.
You mentioned, right, they're in such an awkward position, right, not owning their future draft capital, courtesy of the James Harden trade. All the picks are sitting in Houston. Would that not be an enticing like potential trade partner than if you're the Brooklyn Nets to maybe see if you could loop Houston in as maybe a third team, and instead of getting back, say, you mentioned Scotty Barnes earlier from Toronto, or the other rumors of, obviously the biggest one linked so far is Kevin Durant really wants to play in Phoenix, so there's the DeAndre Ayton rumors, like something like that, where maybe you reroute the player, the tangible asset from the trade to a team like Houston, and then the Brooklyn Nets potentially do or could get a majority of, if not all of their draft capital back from Houston in some permutation of a trade like this, and then they would have the ability to truly bottom out and not kind of be stuck in that NBA middle ground. Do you think that's an enticing possibility and one worth at least exploring by the Nets front office?
If I was Houston, I don't know. I know why. I'd have to be so incentivized to do it, because if you're Houston, yes, okay. The answer is yes. It would be great to claw back anything that they gave up in the deal. Which I will still go on record saying I make that deal 10 times out of 10. So I'm not gonna be the group that's gonna be like, oh, you never should have done that. I stand by that. I would make that deal every single time. But if you can claw back those picks at all, of course you do it. If I'm the Rockets, I'd be really hard pressed to do that, only because I'm looking at this situation and licking my lips and thinking, man, this is about to turn out so great, because short of a great return, they are just going to stink here possibly. And at that point, I don't know. I mean, the Rockets, but yes, I don't know why the Rockets would do it, but yes, if they could claw back and get 2 of those picks back or something like that, where you knew you could just go through a tank here, and just try to, reshape your franchise. Sure. I do think there is a real world though, where might be just enough scenarios of other teams wanting to ship off some of these other guys that could help them stay at least relevant now. And like, that is the Toronto package that's just been sort of weird, like floated out there. That is the Phoenix package, which includes Ayton, who's still, I know he's getting dragged hard. He's still a good player, right? It would be a terrible situation, but it would start to do something for them wins wise. They've heard little bits and bobs about Donovan Mitchell coming out of Utah now, because, after the Gobert thing, that they might just be completely blowing it up. Like, these are some small functional ways to at least be interesting / maybe make the playoffs. But yeah, I don't know. If you hear me kind of like hedging a little bit, it's only because, like you said at the beginning, this is almost the worst. It is the worst possible scenario for that. This went off the rails so bad that like that needs like a TSA investigation. It just is so it is so rough around what has happened here, because they just tied their ship to just 3 guys who, I guess we just can just say, they just, from a franchise perspective, can't be trusted. I don't know. And whatever, if they have legitimate gripes, they have legitimate gripes. I get it. But it's just, they went for 3 dudes, and these dudes just didn't want to end up playing there, and they mortgaged a lot of the future, and now they're really about to pay the piper.
And hopefully, again, they're able to kind of, remedy some of that with whatever the return is that they ultimately do get for Kevin Durant. I think, when you look at it from the perspective of, potentially trying to claw some of those picks back from Houston, you're kind of weighing the odds as to, okay, well, maybe Brooklyn is bad enough to where these convey into some top 5, delicious, amazing assets. Or, again, depending on the return that they may or may not get for Kevin Durant, maybe for Kyrie Irving, maybe if we entertain the idea of a Kyrie Irving for Russell Westbrook swap, right? Like, suddenly you're looking at the floor of a team that might just be good enough to keep them in like the lottery range, the top end of the lottery, maybe, to where they're still clawing for like that 7 to 10 seed in the East, to where the picks don't translate to their maximum capability, which is why maybe I think if you're Houston, you're kind of looking at it like, well, if we could get a top end talent right now, then why not go for it and trade some of that draft capital back, rather than, sitting here wishing and hoping that it turns into something juicy further down the line. But you mentioned some names there, Doug. You
I didn't mention Westbrook. By the way, I'll just put on record, you mentioned Westbrook, not me. I'm not even prepared to talk about it.
Okay, you know what? It's a possibility, right? But we gotta handle the Kevin Durant situation first. I think that's the first domino that's got to fall, sure. And the Kyrie Irving situation will be resolved afterwards, more than likely, depending on what happens with KD. But of those names that you kind of mentioned there, right? Donovan Mitchell, DeAndre Ayton, the possible Toronto package. Which one of those to you is the most attractive deal, like on the surface? I know we're kind of just speculating right now, but as far as like a building block to kind of get your, hit the ground running and not be completely thrown into NBA purgatory, which one of those names is the most enticing to you?
So I usually my partner Adam is the trade machine guy. I don't spend too much time in the wild speculation until it becomes very real, and it feels real enough to me there that I did fire it up this weekend. The one that I like the best, which I do think is like somewhat realistic, is a Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent, and maybe a pick or two for Durant. Like just straight up and just do that. I think that gives Toronto actually a kind of core that they can think about, having some upside with Van Vliet, Siakam, and Durant. The money works coming back. I got some pushback on how many picks would be included. I don't actually think Toronto would need to include that many picks in that deal. Like getting Barnes and OG back, who are just so young on like really cost controlled deals for a while, and just have rookie of the year / like lottery upside, which we've already basically seen. That would be something, if they pulled the trigger on that, I think I could feel okay about it, just because it resets the timeline. They're not a championship team now, but they won't be bad, but they got a lot younger and with real talent that you could dream about. So I think of those scenarios, that's the one, which again is total speculation, but Toronto has been linked to this. So it's not just getting thrown in out of nowhere here. That's a one where I could say that's not too bad. If they didn't send a ton of picks back, I think it's okay, because you're saying, okay, well, I got like a top 2 pick in Barnes or something like that, or if you want to rank him, top 3, where he comes out of the, maybe not even that high. But those, getting a package like that, younger, cost-controlled talent, you can dream about it. You can shoot from some upside later and reset your timeline. That's the one that I've kind of seen and now can't unsee. And I think the other ones, like the Ayton stuff, kind of pales in comparison to that. And definitely any like Miami, like Tyler Hero, no thanks. So that's kind of where I land right now. So I have sort of set my goal, or my sights on. I have set my sights on. I've set my sights on what Toronto could possibly send back, and I do think it's realistic, because I think it fits what they're trying to do also.
There's a lot going on in Brooklyn. How does the Kevin Durant situation ultimately, solve itself? What happens with Kyrie Irving in the aftermath of the Kevin Durant situation? What will the Brooklyn Nets look like, a few weeks from now, a month from now, a few days from now, even, right? Who knows when this is ultimately going to come to a head? But of course, you're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Nets. Doug, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot.